February 24th, 1979. I'm interviewing my mother, Carol Mullally, and I'd like to know what the good old days were like. First of all, what kind of lights did you use in your home when you were a child?
We had a kerosene lamp and a lantern. We had one lamp in the kitchen and one lamp in the living room. That one lamp that was in the kitchen had a long stand on it. It was a movable lamp. The other one hung on a bracket on the wall. It could be taken out of the bracket and carried as a separate lamp. But then I remember mostly of just having one lamp and then the lantern hanging on a nail on the rafter over the stove in the lean-to kitchen. And that was our light.
So, how did the lights work compared with today?
Oh, well, they were, we didn't know the difference then, but it's no comparison at all. It was a yellowish light. We didn't have a mantle lamp. They were just plain wick lamps and lanterns. The lantern would be taken out. A lot of times we had to go wait for the lantern to come back from the barn for to have light in the kitchen, or carry the lamp from the combination living and dining room into the kitchen while the lantern was out in the barn or outside.
Were the children allowed to use those lamps?
No, that wasn't even expected. They didn't carry the lantern. Yes, the older children would carry the lantern if they had to make a call out in the back, the little house.
What do you mean?
In a dark night, but an older child always went along with the younger ones.
What do you mean by little house?
Well, they had no indoor plumbing then. It was the outdoor plumbing.
Was there ever any accident with the lights?
No, I never remember any. The only accident that would be is when they'd hang the lantern up on the nail on the rafter, that it would get hooked by the ring that held the chimney in. It would pull up the top and that would release the chimney. That happened a few times until my dad took that ring out completely. So that couldn't happen anymore.
How was your house heated?
Well, it was heated for 8 months of the year by a range, an old cook stove. It wasn't actually a range. It was the old-fashioned cast iron cook stove with bric-a-brac and 4 legs and a shell back with a shelf on it up above, a warming shelf. But to get to a range, we never got up to a range when I was home. A range was something that was more closed in. Had a reservoir. We never had a reservoirs where you warmed water, got warm water out of. We never had that. Our water was heated by tea kettle and kettles on the stove. And then of course 4 months of the winter time we would have a heating stove, a round oak heating stove in the combination dining and living room with a pile of wood piled behind it, alongside and behind it.
Did the children have any chores to do?
Oh, they all had chores. After a child was 5 years old, there was work expected of them, and there was no, what would I say? It wasn't like nowadays that they thought that it was terrible. It was just, they knew it was needed, that was their duty, and we picked everything from arbutus, flowers, winter green berries to sell, blueberries, blackberries. We picked raspberries and strawberries for neighbors, for our own, and sell them. Like I say, we picked for the neighbors and got so much for every box or every crate to sell. We picked cherries that we'd have to ride a long ways to go and pick cherries. We picked apples. My sister and I walked. I think I have counted. It was 5 or 6 miles that we walked. But we got in on the last day of picking apples on that farm. It wasn't really a tree fruit area. We walked that far that one day, and we picked and we finished the job along with other people, and it was a walk of 5 miles each way. And the chores, well, we took care of the chickens, we worked in the garden, watering the garden, hoeing what crops we had. We didn't have too much of a farm, but we hoed, we cut wood, piled wood, went with my dad to pile wood for neighbors that had a big wood buzzing day, that we would pile the wood into measurable cords, and then they would sell it, and we would get so much for piling it. I and my sisters, us older ones, we planted corn for neighbors besides picking berries. Any jobs that we could get, we were expected. I helped my dad year after year cut the grass and the weeds and tidy up the cemetery in the township before Memorial Day for a small. My dad would get the job, and we were expected to help.
What fabrics were your clothes made of?
Well, they were different than what they are nowadays, although they're getting back to some of them as a novelty, I guess, but they're made in a very better form. We had gingham. There was so much gingham and calico in those days, and shrinkage was terrible. You had to make a garment a lot bigger than what was needed. And I don't know why they didn't wash the material before they made it. And gingham was the biggest part of the cloth that dresses was made of. Ticking. There were things that was made out of ticking. That was a blue and white striped material. I don't know, they had to have denim because there was overalls, but those things seemed to be all bought and ready-made, but they were, of course, didn't cost as much as what they do nowadays. Overalls, they call them. And the pants was made out of, men's pants was made out of a twill. Oh, heavy, coarse material, but they were all wrinkly. They all had to be ironed, and of course the irons were sad irons, they call them. You heated them on a stove. There were some that had an iron handle. You had to use a pot holder to take them. You'd put them on the stove and get them hot, and then you'd iron with them until they got cool, and then you'd change, put another one on, put that back on the stove. And then there was some that had the detachable handle. You would get it off the stove and iron, wet your finger and touch at the bottom of it. It sizzled. It was hot enough to iron with. But everything had to be ironed that was ironed. A lot of things were used without being ironed. There was just too much to be ironed in that way. But we all, a big family, we were all kept neat and clean. Never sent to school not looking nice.
What sort of washing machine did you have?
A washboard in a tub. Corrugated washboard, galvanized or glass washboard with a bar of soap.
How did it work?
It didn't work. Manpower, people power worked it. It just stood there. It didn't work at all.
What kind of stove and what kind of fuel did your family use for cooking?
No, that was a wood cook stove. They never called them. I don't know what they really called them because they're not a range. The range came in later that had much more improvements on it. It looked nicer. It was on wood. Some people in the cities and so forth used coal, but us out in the country we used wood. It was nice cooking. a lot of work, a lot of heat in the summertime. Cooking on the stove sure heated the house up. But I myself even like to stoke a fire and cook on wood.
Did you have a refrigerator?
No, we didn't even have an ice box. A lot of people would have ice box. That was where there would be a compartment that would be insulated. You put ice and then the cold would work down around the sides to cool the food that was put in the compartment underneath.
How did you keep your food fresh?
Kelly, I don't remember. When we had a cow, we'd milk the cow in the morning, and we was lucky if that milk stayed fresh till we'd milked her again in the evening. And the evening's milk never stayed fresh. But of course, that milk was set aside and let the cream come to the top. The cream was skimmed off and make butter out of it. And it didn't hurt if it come off from sour milk. It wasn't the kind of sweet butter. It was good, but still lots of times it would have a sour taste to it. No, the milk, the stuff, the food couldn't be kept. Everything had to be cooked and then used within a short period of time, like meat. Well, you didn't try to keep meat. You either salted it, put it in a salt brine. When we would butcher in the fall, all the meat would go into a barrel with salt brine, salt strong enough to float an egg. And then any fresh meat that was bought would be cooked right up within, 24 hours at the longest. I never had a refrigerator until 13 years after I was married in 1941. So I had quite a bit of experience. Of course, we had a basement. I could put stuff that would keep cooler in the basement, but that wasn't always so practical neither. When we got milk delivered when I was growing up and married, and we had milk delivered, it was delivered every morning. And you used it up because it would be sour by the next morning. It was hard to keep milk for a baby. Helen she was a bottle-fed baby, and we needed milk by the time the milkman came in the morning. He came before you get up in the morning. A lot of places.
How was food packaged when it came from the store?
Everything, I think, came into the store mostly. Stuff came in bulk, and it came in brown bags. Oatmeal, rice. Of course, flour came in its big bags from the factory, from the milling company. But raisins and crackers and ginger snaps, cookies, everything came in bulk. You could see the boxes in the store, lineup of cookies, and you'd pick what kind you want, and they'd put them in a brown sack and weigh them out. Crackers, graham crackers too, they came in a big box in bulk to the store. That's the way you'd buy them. A pound or a half a pound in a brown sack.
What sort of soap did you use, and did it clean as well as the cleaners we have now?
Well, I don't know about the cleaning because, of course, my mother always done the washing until we got quite much bigger. But myself, too, when I did my own washing on the washboard for 5, 6, 7 years, after I was married, I did my washing on the washboard. I used bar soap, Fels Naphtha, P&G, Star, White Star, I think it was. We rub it on the clothes and rub the clothes on the board, and we'd shave the soap into the hot water so that it would make soapy water. Got our clothes clean. I never knew of such a thing as bleach for a long, long time.
How was your water heated for bathing and laundry?
Well, bathing, when you got your bath, whether you needed it or not, it was heated on a kettle, tea kettle, or kettles on the stove and dumped into a wash tub. And for washing the same way, it was heated in so many kettles on the stove and poured into the tub. And warm up the rinse water a little bit so your hands could stand it to wring out the clothes. That's the way it was. A lot of them, when they got a range and had a reservoir in the back, you could get quite a bit of water out of a reservoir, but not nearly enough for washing. You put about 3 big kettles on the stove and the tea kettle, get them hot. And we'd boil our clothes too. That's another thing. We would heat water in the wash boiler. We'd heat water in the wash boiler and put it in the tub and wash the clothes, and then we'd get some more water in that wash boiler and we'd wash the clothes, and then we'd put them in the white clothes, put them in the boiler and boil them. Poke them with a stick, keep poking them up and down, and then take them out and rinse them enough times to get the salt out. And then in the wintertime we'd always hang our clothes outside, but in the wintertime we was always glad, because if we could get them out without freezing our fingers, the frost would bleach them. Don't hang anything out that was a delicate color, because it would get bleached. Might have to bring them in when they would stand up alone with the frost in them. But when they dried out, oh, they had such a sweet smell, and it was a lot of the water was gone out of them. They would actually freeze dry. That's, I guess, where the freeze-dried coffee comes from.
Did your family have a car?
Yes, but I was about 10 years old when we got our first car. I think in 1918. I think we got the first car. And before that, well, we had a horse and wagon. And that was our modes of transportation. We never had a horse for pleasure, for horseback riding or anything like that. The horse was to pull the cultivator or the plow, pull the wagon to town, bring the groceries home, maybe take in a load of wood, or if we had some to sell that somebody hadn't come after, deliver some to somebody that lived in town and didn't have a way to come after it. We cut wood to sell.
Did you look upon the horse as just a thing, or did you have good feelings toward it? Was it something like a pet?
I can't remember feeling close to the horse. A cow, yes, we had a cow. I don't know, don't think she had a name, but we had her so long. But the horse, I think we had 2 or 3 different horses. I can't remember feeling close to the horse. Scared the living daylights out of Grace and I one time. We took our dad to the train. That was 4.5, 5 miles to Dalton Station to the train, and then we were going home, and we were going to make the horse go in a hurry, so we used the whip on it, and boy, that horse raised his whole hind quarters up and let its legs fly back, and we just missed getting hit in the face. So we cowered.
You didn't whip it again?
No, we didn't whip it again. Grace and I both remember that time. We were quite young kids. That happened right near where the old McMillan School was. I remember the spot even.
How did you children get to school?
Well, we walked, unless Pa would be going that way with the horse and wagon. We'd ride part way, or we'd get down to Grandpa and Grandma's house, and Grandpa happened to be going. Why, then we would get a ride on the sleigh, horse-drawn sleigh in the wintertime, or a wagon in the summertime, because he owned quite a few different parcels of land, and they eked out their living by cutting and selling wood. And so he was more or less, a lot of times, heading off for the woods, and maybe coming home about the time that we came home from school. So we did get some rides riding with, and that was an enjoyment to ride with Grandpa, or although we never got close to Grandpa. We got closer to Grandma, but not as close as what kids do nowadays because there was a certain language barrier. But we did like riding the sleighs. That was fun, to ride the bobsleds behind the horse. And then when my dad would too have the horse, and then later he would go into the woods with the car with a lot of times he had a sort of a delivery type car, and he'd haul quite a bit of wood on it. Then later years it was a touring car, but that didn't stop putting wood in it, loading it down with wood.
Did you have a radio?
Radio was unheard of. First radio I know of, Uncle Paul got in about 1922, something like that. He built a radio, and that was something. You go in and you put the earphones on, and you'd be listening. You wouldn't know nothing what you were a kid didn't know anything what you were hearing. You'd rather go outside and play with the other kids. Sit there with them earphones on. It was just a novelty.
Did you go to the movies?
Movies? I don't know if I went to one or two movies as I was a kid. One time my dad was going to take us to the movies, and we went to the movie, I guess, okay, and what was it, a nickel a piece, I guess, to get into the movies. And who was the baby? I don't know. It must have been Doris. It's the only thing I can think of was Doris. And we got there all right, but coming home we got motor trouble coming across where the south arm of the causeway is now. That was both ways. It was the bridge, the long bridge they called it. And it had poplar trees on both sides going across the marsh. And the car stalled. And they were actually working on the road, because some places there was only, you had to stop and wait for the other traffic to come. You pull off the side and let the other cars go by. And we got car trouble, and the car didn't run. And so I remember then there came the North Muskegon bus, and my mother got out in front of it and waved the baby's bonnet to flag down the bus. And we all got on the bus. My dad knew it was a hopeless job to get that car going. So then we rode the bus to what is now the Four Corners of North Muskegon, and then we walked to a Horton Road to right near where Laketon Bethel Church is now. That's where my aunt and uncle lived. We walked and stayed there overnight, and then my brother, went and got the car somehow or another in the morning, or in the forenoon. But that was quite a walk. We walked down Witham Drive to Dykstra, and then Dykstra to Horton, and Horton, quite a space to get to where my aunt lived in. There was only a few houses along that road then. Well, in fact, I can only say two houses between Dykstra and Horton Road.
I can see why you didn't go to movies very often.
No. But that was, I'll never forget that time. I don't think any of us that was of any age at all will forget that.
What kinds of entertainment did you enjoy?
Well, we would play checkers, and we played dominoes, and we had a deck of cards, although my mother always said the devil was in the house when there was a deck of cards in the house. She didn't care for cards at all. But we would play casino, and I don't know if we ever played Pedro. And we'd have old maid cards, and we would make it so you could play old maids with regular cards by taking one out so there wouldn't be a matching one. And dominoes and checkers. And we would read, and my dad would read a continued story by this one lamp And we'd all sit around on the floor and whatnot, because what could you expect in a room about, oh, say maybe 12 by 15, 10 by 13 or something like that, with a big dining room table in it and a heating stove and a pile of wood and a couch that would serve as a sofa, and anybody that didn't feel good or something would be laying on that couch. And he would read a chapter or so each evening, and then when it come time to quit, well, he quit. Of course, we'd always beg for a little bit more, but it was time to go to bed. And of course, bedtime wasn't like now. We would go to bed at 9 o'clock at night, because what else was there to do? Well, it was get up early in the morning and get ready to start off for school soon after 7 o'clock.
In what ways is life for you more enjoyable now that we have electricity, plastics, detergents, and other oil and natural gas products?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how to say that. Well, I wonder how in the world we got along, and I wonder what amazement my mother would have to see now the improvements that she never had. Wax paper was an unheard of thing in the house. We had the wrappers that came on boughten bread, but very seldom that we had boughten bread. We wrapped our lunch in, believe it or not, in newspaper. Wrapped our sandwiches. But we didn't know the difference. We was happy, so I can't say what I enjoy better now than I did then. We had a very happy childhood. And even my younger days of being married, the sprimping that we had, but we didn't know. Can't say we didn't know any better. We had full happiness.
In what ways did you like the good old days better?
Well, I can't even say that. Good old days. We can say those things, but I wonder, do we really believe them? Good old days. I think it's as much as we enjoy today, we can look back and wonder, why didn't we enjoy the days in the past better? But I think we enjoy each day, or we should. There's more tension, more stress nowadays, but there must have been for the older people too, sometimes not knowing where the next meal was coming from, not knowing what was the matter with their child, when they couldn't, so far away they couldn't have a doctor. For the women that were expecting and didn't see a doctor until they would call a doctor when the labor pains started, and then wondering whether the doctor would come or could come. You wonder those things. I always think of that when I pass any old houses anywhere in the country. I wonder about the happiness, the heartaches, the love, the misery, what has all the life that has been lived in that house. No matter where the house is. No, I can't see. Well, I can't say. They always say the good old days, and to read the stories about the good old days is very enjoyable. The young people. I will say this, I think the young people don't know what they're missing or what they missed. But years from now, they'll look back at their younger days and say the good old days.